Against, carried. Reports now, fixing the common seal, 9.1, which is on page 25. Catch up myself. So just for approval of warrants, happy to move that. Thank you, Councillor Parker. Put the motion to the floor. All those in favour, please say aye. Good there, Jess. Yep. 29 now, presentation of Venture Timaru Limited annual report, and ask Nigel Davenport to come. And obviously the annual reports, we have had these through, but these are finalised, so I'll let you briefly speak to that. Thanks, Nigel.
Thank you, Your Worship. Good afternoon, everybody. Yes, I'll take it as read. This is the audited annual report that we spoke to our draft and answered queries back on the 4th of October, I think. So it was just a delay in getting our audited report through. So I'll take it as read. Happy to field any other queries in addition to those that you asked of me or us in October. And the only difference really to the audited annual accounts, which are a clean audit, a completely clean audit, is that we pay the tax man a bit, so our surplus is reduced accordingly from down to about 60,000. So again, as I say, happy to field any questions that weren't covered off at the last meeting.
Well, that's, you're quite proud of the clean audit. Is it normally a dirty audit, or?
Always a clean one, Your Worship.
Any questions for Mr Davenport? If not, can I have someone move? Councillor Piddington.
Yeah, just Nigel, I just wondered, for clarity, since you're a CCO, a number of our annual accounts have employees and salary bands. A number, could that be added at some stage, just for?
Yep, sure thing. More than happy to.
Thank you.
Perfect. Thanks, Councillor Piddington. Any other questions? Councillor Piddington, you happy to move that one? Thank you. Can I have a seconder? Councillor Burt. Thank you. Put the motion to the floor. All those in favour, please say aye. Against, carried. Thank you, Nigel. And obviously, for those that may see this online, we did have this presented, the draft report, previously, so not a lot of questions, so I appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Move now to 9.3, which is Timaru District Holdings Limited annual report, which is on page 57, and I'll invite Mr Munro and Mr Rogers. Welcome, team. Pass to you.
Thank you, Your Worship, Councillors. The TDHL annual report is the same report that was presented at the AGM. That was an audited report signed off, and this is the same one for presentation to Council. So, open to questions.
Thank you. Councillor Piddington.
Sorry, I missed the AGM. Your property revenue's down a wee bit. Is there an explanation of that?
That was just one long-term tenant that we'd exited out of the site to clear the site, and so we've cleared that site as a future development site now, and expect to have that tenanted with a value-add port-centric long-term tenant in the coming months.
Cool. And I noticed you touched on the report of the south of Stafford Street buildings haven't been.
Things change. Yes.
They do indeed, Mark. Yeah. Would you like to give us a bit of an update of your intentions for that site?
Yep, so we've completed the strategic review at board level. Within that, purchasing back South Stafford Street properties, the 3 that have been sold. We looked at them individually and collectively within our strategic framework. We have a property portfolio. We'll be treating them as business as usual going forward within that. Down at the port, we look to get a certain return on those properties. We look at tenanting them out, getting short-term returns, but opportunities around them collectively and development opportunities, as Fraser was just referring to, with one down there that we demoed, expanded, port-centric, and we'll be treating these the same now. So we're going to take a breath, put it within our portfolio, and then work forward from there.
following up from that though, Mark, last time you put them out for tender, it had to be something specific that helped what we're doing in the CBD. Is that still the
Yeah,
theory?
that is the case. That will still be specific to helping the CBD, in the same way that with port-located properties, we have a mix of tenants down at the port, but our preference is to have port-related tenants down there to value add to that ecosystem. It's the same up in South Stafford Street as well, so it'll be CBD specific in terms of development. When we went to that tender previously, we were looking generically at value add to the CBD. We had different options come in. We weren't looking for a hotel opportunity at that stage. That's the one that was the preferred option. When we look at it going forward, we might have a more specific focus on what we look to put there and how we look to develop it. We're undertaking a key learnings process from that and the showgrounds as well at the moment. It's coming back to the board so that we can sharpen our processes up and get those better for future as well.
Final question, Mark. Did Thompson's indicate, was it the cost of the build, the operator, or they didn't really say?
Changing economic conditions and uncertainty.
Okay.
That's
Thank you.
correct, isn't it? Yeah.
Cheers.
Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Pennington. Further questions? Councillor Booth.
Yeah, hi. Just looking at, I'm just inquiring around AEL and their performance. I note in your report that you've got them in there as achieved or achievements, but the rest of the financial report shows that you've compared to the previous, the numbers to the previous year. I got the numbers from obviously the AEL website, and I'm just looking at the profit before income tax has dropped from 23 million down to 12 million, and the profit from operations is down from 17 to 8.8. I probably would have thought that was something of significance, and probably should be in there as something that it would show up if you had the 2021 numbers in there. So I guess I'm wondering, we did cover some of this at the AGM. There was a commentary as to what's happened and what has been done to remedy the situation.
I suppose first and foremost, nothing's happened. Are you looking at consolidated numbers or that we've brought into the annual report?
Operating results.
Can you just go to a page for all elected
Oh,
members?
yeah, yep. So the page is, you've got achieved. So you use the words achieved.
Yeah.
I'll find the page. Oh yeah, on page 66 and 67.
Of the annual report or
Yeah,
the
annual
council?
report.
66.
Page 9 and page 10 of your report.
Yeah, so those are the group level figures for Alpine. I suspect, but it'd be good to sit down with you and go number by number. But I think the consolidated revenue numbers you're bringing in are our share of their revenue, so it'll only be 40%.
Yeah, so the share was, yeah, okay, but at the end of the day, it's hard to tell what the previous year was. You can used to see the numbers here, but really it should be the previous year's actuals should have been included, as with the rest of the financial statements.
Yeah, that's one of the challenges we've got with the annual report, is that it's a real statutory audit-driven document, and it's not a great tool for telling the story and reflecting performance to that degree. It's what goes in here and the way it goes in and the way it consolidates and is very, very much directed by audit. So that's why we try and have those AGM sessions to be able to drill down into a bit more detail. That's why we provide you, like we are in March, we'll come back with a company-specific update to give a more coloured and detailed version of performance. But I guess the bottom line is that that there isn't an issue with performance. there is the challenges in terms of decarbonisation, electrification of process heat, network loading that remain before them, but year-on-year performance has been as per budget.
Yeah, so I guess where would I find in this report then, considering Alpine is half your money, your investment, that it's had a 50% decrease in profitability?
I don't think that it's had a 50% decrease in profitability.
Well, I mean, 2021, your profit from operations was 17.7. This year, it's 8.824.
I'm happy to go through the numbers with you, probably at a more detailed level.
So that's just off the website.
Is that, sorry, question, default price pathway 3 has been in place for how many years?
4 years now.
4 years now, so,
It's up next year.
oh, okay.
What I'm getting at is such a substantial decrease in profitability should actually be highlighted in here and talked about.
Yeah, and I appreciate that, but then you're also getting net tangible assets per share, which the target was $7.07 and they came in at $7.60, so total value is still created.
It's due to revaluation.
Yep, but these are the targets that are in there, so they will have up and down years. In terms of the profitability, and this is where we do need to probably sit down and go into the detail more, rather than an annual report, but the irrigation use last year was down, driving lower revenues, yet that ends up through calculation methods getting caught back up next year. So there should be a consequential upswing. But
And
that's the complications around the pricing methods within the electricity market.
And we've talked about the influence of that irrigation the last 3 times we've been here. You know, it does play a part, but it swings and roundabouts because of default price path settings.
So was that mentioned in your report?
In the annual report, no.
Thank you.
Like I said, it's a regulatory document, and
Well, I just think it's something of substance that should have actually been in there.
Understood.
Councillor Shannon.
Just a quick one, please, with regards to point 10 to the notes, property held at showgrounds for sale expected settlement dates for lots 5, 8 and 9. How's that looking? And have you got specific dates for that yet?
yes, the settlement for lot 5 is due in the next month or 2, and the settlement for the remaining lots is set by the development agreement next year.
Thank you. Any further questions? No, let's move ahead. I'm happy to move the adoption. Councillor Booth, thank you. Seconder, put the motion to the floor. All those in favour, please say aye. Against, carried. So now we move to our 6 monthly reports. I'll pass back to Fraser and Mark.
Thank you. TDHL is pleased to present this report for the period 1st July 2022 to 31st December 2022. The key areas of focus for TDHL since the September 22 report have been finalising a refreshed strategic framework and completing the 2022 audit. The refreshed strategic framework is incorporated into and underpins the new 2023 Statement of Intent that will be provided to Council in late February. The 2022 audit was successfully completed on 23rd of November with an unmodified opinion issued by Audit New Zealand. This is particularly pleasing given the historic technical restatements required by Audit New Zealand and ensures TDHL continues to achieve regulatory compliance. The activity updates below provide further details and the commentary on the financial statement shows that the steady start to the year has been maintained. The focus for the next 6 months beyond business as usual is to continue our engagement with Council, to build on our relationships with our associates and fellow shareholders, and to ensure the business is equipped to deliver the outcomes of the new Statement of Intent. Regarding financial performance, TDHL financial statements as at 31st of December 2022 are provided below. In summary, the profit and loss, the year-to-date operating surplus is $1.5 million compared to a budget of $1.9 million. The variance is a result of the $471,000 AEL dividend received in July 2022 being transferred and recognised in the previous financial year as required by all the auditors. For clarity, the AEL dividends are being received as forecast and TDHL is achieving forecast cash budget and would meet full year forecasts had the auditors not required this recognition. The variance in showgrounds is a result of part of the stage transfer of land and the current agreement yet to be completed. This is tracking to settle this financial year. Total finance costs are below budget due to lower overall debt and interest rates slightly below forecasts. Other revenue and expense items are to budget. Movements in equity, statement of cash flows. The statement of cash flows illustrates the actual receipt of dividends as detailed. The $500,000 dividend to TDC is paid in November 2022 as shown. Further $500,000 dividend to TDC is forecast to be paid in June 2023. Balance sheet. The balance sheet and statement of cash flow shows a very strong cash position. This will be quickly reduced to the statement of intent target levels in mid-2023 as a result of the dividend payment to TDC, contract payments for the 3 phases street ceiling site and tax provision. Regarding governance, TDC, an unmodified audit opinion was issued by Audit New Zealand on 23rd of November. Following extensive work by the TDHL board, the refreshed TDHL strategic framework was finalised in December. This work was presented to councillors at the TDHL AGM on 7th of December and is now being incorporated into the updated 23-24 Statement of Intent for presentation to Council. Primeport, TDHL continues to receive regular monthly updates from Primeport. The Primeport chair was due and did update the TDHL board in February board meeting. Alpine Energy, TDHL management attended an AEL hosted shareholders induction session on 14th of November, and the AEL chair and new chief executive provided a performance and activity update to the TDHL board on 7th of December. Regarding property, programmed rent reviews and renewals are ongoing, and preliminary site works commenced on the 3 Fraser Street site ceiling project in early February 2023. I'll take the numbers as read, and any questions?
Just on page...
Q.
sorry.
That's right. Councillor Booth.
On page 128, and just in finance costs, you've got 1.6 million, which is a significant increase. Your full year budget 23, full year actual 22 was 718. That's almost doubled. What's that due to?
Interest rates.
Yeah, an increase in interest rates. The interest rates on the intercompany loan is tied to the BKBM rate plus a margin. So obviously that's risen significantly in the last 6 months, and hence significantly more cash is coming back to council.
So we've budgeted more interest finance costs.
It's twice
for
as
the year.
much.
Yeah, that's right, because they've gone up
Interest
a lot.
rates more than double.
And that's why in my commentary I said it's under at the moment 657,000 versus 735 in the budget. So it's under but not materially so, tracking with increased rates.
So full year 22 was 717. So we're actually, have we borrowed more money, or?
No, it's the interest rate on that 20.
So it's almost paying double
The
now.
BKBM rate's gone up.
Yeah.
Right. Okay.
Thank you. Further questions? Councillor Pye.
It's probably more a question for ourselves. You know, like I was really pleased to see the strategy work that you've done at the AGM, and you refer to it in here and coming back to us with the statement of intentions. But what I feel is missing, and we've talked about, but I wonder about the progress, is the letter of expectations from council as shareholder, and how that's going to interact with the statement of intentions. And I just wondered if we're going to progress that and when.
Yeah, I'll let you speak to it and then I'll...
Yeah, through you. Yes, we do intend to progress that, and we have looked, there was a review done of Christchurch City Holdings, I think it was, Fraser, was it? Christchurch, and in that review they had some observations about how a letter of expectations should be progressed and the issues it should address, and we're looking to bring that forward using that there because they had a number of issues, so we want to incorporate that into the letter of expectations because we think it does reflect pretty good practice. Where it's likely to head is to align the strategic direction of TDHL with the long-term plan of council down at 1 July 2024, but we are working on that.
Thank you. Councillor Piddington.
Bede, would you be able to circulate that report you just talked about to us?
Certainly, yeah, if we can make a note so I don't forget, but I'd be pleased to.
And if I can just comment, when we did the strategic work, we did take into account the long-term plan for council as well, so hopefully they'll just mesh together. But we've obviously got our statutory deadlines of the 1st of March to have our SOI in draft form, so we'll align it with the work we've done, and then it's flexible to have discussions through to the 30th of June finalisation.
Yeah, look, in my expectations, once we've received that, we need to have some good discussion around the council table around what some of the priorities, and if we're comfortable with that document moving forward. We'll go to you, Councillor Booth.
Yeah, I guess I'll just, it's something you really need prior to Christmas, isn't it? So you can include that.
Yes, that would be great. But we can accommodate it, to be honest, you know, through the time frame.
That's right, but you can make a change to a statement of intent through the shareholder at any time. So we do have the opportunity to influence. So I don't have any concern around that. Ideally, you would meet timeframes, but we do have the tools if we need to. Further questions? If not, can I have someone move the 6 monthly report? Councillor Booth, thank you. Councillor Pye. Appreciate that. I'll put the motion to the floor. All those in favour, please say aye. Against, carried. Thank you. Thanks, team. Appreciate that. So we move now to 9.5 on page 124. 130, sorry, apologies. Thank you. Adoption of protected disclosures policy for elected members gets more exciting by the minute. Pass to you, Bronwyn. Thank you.
Thank you, Worship. This is for the council to adopt the policy for protected disclosures, protection of whistleblowers policy as per the accordance with the new Act, the Protected Disclosure Protection of Whistleblowers Act 2022 that came into effect on the 1st of July. The purpose of this Act is to strengthen public trust, and the Act requires that public organisations, such as council, have an internal procedure and policy for dealing with protected disclosures. Council is now just aligning its policies and procedures under this new legislation requirements. There are two options. The preferred option is to adopt the policy. The second one is to maintain the status quo. I do have a small note that to the policy that you've been provided to make two small additions, one at 6.6, which is to state that the Registrar of Disclosures will be kept as per the Privacy Act principles and by a designated officer, and in Appendix at 2.2 to add in according to the Privacy Act and privacy principles. The main point of this policy is to enable the reporting of serious wrongdoings to an appropriate authorised authority at any time, while clarifying the ability for the appropriate authority to decline or refer the disclosure on.
Fantastic, thank you. Appreciate the work. Makes really good sense. Any questions? Happy to move. Yeah, and question. Yeah. So we've got a mover, Councillor Parker, and question from Councillor Pike.
I just got a question, like this refers to elected members, and you've got a different one for employees and contractors. Where do the likes of the chair of our Audit and Risk Committee, who's an independent, sit? Do they sit under the contractor policy, or do they sit under this one? And if they sit under this one, do we need to change the wording slightly because they're not an elected member?
That's a very good question. I would imagine that that they would sit under the other
Employee one.
policy, but that's a point that we probably should take into account to adapt that policy as appropriate.
Yeah, go. But that's my understanding as well, that it covers all the other policy covers anyone who acts in a capacity outside of elected members for council, because there's a particular fiduciary obligation imposed on those who are elected to public office, which is what this seeks to address.
And if it helps you, councillor, it also includes volunteers to council. So it protects all of those people who may be otherwise engaged within council business.
Okay, I just have one other question, and forgive me if this is included in the papers, but I didn't actually have time to go and read the code of conduct. But is there any, like, which of these take priority, or do they cover totally separate things? Or, you know, if there's something that's covered in the code of conduct and in this policy, which one's going to take priority?
The code of
Or
conduct.
is there nothing about disclosure in the code of conduct, and that's...
So the code of conduct is currently being reviewed. This policy would take precedence quite simply because it is the new enactment of the legislation that makes it a requirement for council to have this policy.
Yeah, and this builds on what I think is in the code of conduct currently around that side of things, so it gives a framework around how that can be addressed and dealt with.
Just generally, as a general principle, where you get conflicting or competing interests in matters relating to fiduciary obligations, the expectation is that it is a bit of a layered approach, but generally it is the one that imposes the higher standard on the elected member or myself as a CE that is expected to be observed, is the general expectation. But you have to measure that against then the statutory underpinning that imposes the obligation. So I think it's correct to say that as a rule, if there was a conflict, you would look to the policy as having a higher ranking than the code of conduct would be, I think, where I would see it sitting. If there was a conflict, but generally you find there aren't really conflicts, because they're both, if there was, in any particular matter, they tend to be addressing very similar issues.
Alrighty, thank you. Further questions? The mover, Councillor Parker, Councillor Pye, you have to second that? Thank you. Put the motion to the floor. All those in favour, please say aye. Against, carried. Thanks, team. Appreciate that. Move now to 9.7, which is appointment to joint committees and groups, and that's on page 150. Sorry? Did I miss that?
Oh,
Where's my...
9.6 is missed from the agenda.
It is, that's why. Yeah.
Go to 9.7.
What page is that? It's not on my agenda. My printed 140. Thank you.
Oh, sorry. Oh, yeah, 140.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Yep. Okay.
Yeah, I can talk to this.
Yeah, no worries. Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, okay, yep.
Move in a second. Would you like some commentary? You're all pretty okay? New elected members okay? Okay, thank you. So that was, the mover was Councillor Jackson and Councillor Burt. Put the motion to the floor. Those in favour, please say aye. Against, carried. So that was the adoption of the Canterbury Local Authorities Triennial Agreement. Thank you. Move now to 9.7, which is on page 150. And appointment to joint committees and groups. Let's catch up. Cool. Okay, so we can probably do this ourselves. So generally, so in the past, we've got one member to Canterbury Joint Waste Committee. I think that was previous Councillor O'Reilly. Is that correct? So historically, that's been someone from infrastructure, because waste falls under infrastructure. So there could be you, Councillor Oliver. One member to Canterbury Joint Waste Committee.
Yeah, I'm happy with that.
Thank you. Well done. One member to Biodiversity Champions Group. Now I'm happy to do that one, if that's okay. Yeah, happy. Yeah, we'll move this all together. And then there's one member to Climate Change Action Planning Reference Group, and Councillor Pye and myself have had some discussions around this, and yes, definitely Councillor Booth would be our favoured. But it was more to share the workload, and there is some work obviously that myself and her are involved with. And so would you like to take that on, Councillor Pye? Unless there's anyone else that would be interested, but it sort of makes sense with alignment of current roles. So we've got Councillor Oliver, myself at number 2, Councillor Pye at number 3. Can I have a mover for those 3? Councillor Scott, you're not on the paper today. Happy to move that? Yes, fantastic. Seconder, Councillor Shannon, thank you. Put the motion to the floor. Those in favour, please say aye. Against, carried. That was easy. District Plan Review Hearings Panel on page 152. Megan, Hamish and Paul, welcome.
Thank you, Your Worship and Councillors. This is a report brought to you so that Council can decide on the makeup of the panel to hear the hearings that relate to the District Plan Review process. If we can please take the report as read, and I've asked Hamish and Megan to be here to answer any technical questions. Thanks.
Thank you. And there's obviously the table on 23 presents some costs, but I don't think we should look probably too closely at that. I think we should probably just look for the best outcome. We've talked previously that we have one commissioner and elected members fill the other roles, and that's probably my preference, but happy for anyone to talk to that, or if there's any commentary. Does anyone have any other thoughts? Councillor Burt.
No, I was just going to say, in terms of the previous, it's always been a commissioner and generally 2 elected members, and that we should be right across the page on what is best for our community, representing the community and understanding what those things are. However, in terms of that potential for an iwi commissioner also, that does add a potential there. My preference would be the panel would be elected members with a iwi commissioner there.
Sorry to dive into that, but is there any particular reason? Just to have iwi representation on the where do we go?
Your Worship, we
Yes.
might be able to
thank you.
add a little bit of value there, Hamish, if you mind.
The recommendation doesn't preclude an iwi commissioner. We expect, particularly for some parts, maybe a broad spectrum of parts of the plan, that we will have an iwi commissioner present.
Yeah, it's the primary commissioner will be the chair of the panel in effect, and that's, I suppose that's what we're talking about here, yeah.
Cool, thank you. Any further discussion? Otherwise, if you're comfortable with that, Councillor Burt will move, I'll move at least one commissioner and 2 elected members. Happy to support that. Councillor Burt, you're the seconder. Any further discussion? No. So put the motion to the floor. All those in favour, please say aye. Against, carried. Thank you. Appreciate that. And just, sorry, one question actually while you're there, because it was around timing. So you've got indicative timing in regard to hearings over a couple of years, and that's pretty much where you're wanting it to head, only because I'm conscious of the conversations we've had around, priority on SASMs as an example, and I think that's in block 2, which is still pretty early on, and I think it makes sense, obviously, the way you followed it. So we don't want to, as elected members, probably to be disruptive, but I guess the wishes of elected members, and I can't speak for all of us, but I think in the fact that we want to push those enabling ones and then have the ability to request that they have, at least the ability to have request that they have a legal, immediate legal effect, that wouldn't hinder that in sort of any way.
Yeah. If, and that can be accommodated in how we do it. It might be a little bit more resource intensive because you might have parallel processes, i.e. some appeals running through at the same time while we're doing other things. But it certainly can be done, that's my understanding. I mean, this is just an initial bite at how we might break it up so that we've got enough resourcing with what we've got to deliver the district plan review hearings and the proposed plan. It can be done a lot quicker, but I suppose the quicker you rush through this process, the more likelihood that we might rub people up the wrong way, or we might not take everybody on the journey with us, if you will, and it'll be more intensive on staff or on the team rather. So we're just trying to find that balance, the medium. But we intend to come back to council with an update on some of the themes and submissions at a later date when we've done more analysis and more data entry and getting that into the system. And at that point, we'll probably have a more formed view on what it might look like after having more discussion with the chair that we're currently in the process of appointing.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you. I'm happy with that. So we did move that. Thank you. We'll move on now to 9.9, which is extension of membership. So I'll just pass to the District Licensing Committee. So I'll just pass to Councillor Shannon for this one. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Worship. So 9.9, page 160, the recommendation being that Council extend the membership of Councillor Gavin Oliver to the Timaru District Licensing Committee for a period of 5 years, ending 26 November 2027. I suppose, Councillor Oliver, thumbs up from your end? Happy to do that? Yeah, yep, good, thanks. So we can take that as read, I suppose. Thank you, Councillor Parker, seconder. Councillor Pye. Put to the floor, councillors in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against? Carried. Thank you, Your Worship.
Brilliant. Thank you. Councillor. Alrighty, now we go to 9.10 and welcome Mark and Andrea and Jason, and 6 months performance report.
Thank you, Worship. So this report is the Timaru District Council 6-month performance report, which covers our levels of service in terms of how we're going against all of our KPIs, and certainly talks to our financial position as at the end of December. What is key to this report is this is the first report where we've completed a forecast. So we've got a forecasted spend as at the end of 30 June 2023. Like any forecast, it's a work in progress, and on a month-by-month basis we'll review it as more assumptions change or they become a bit more crystallised. So what I'll do is I'll get Mark to talk to sort of the performance stuff, and then Andrew's going to talk to the financial information.
Thanks, Jason. So obviously the report outlines the current status of how we're going against our KPIs, all key performance indicators, and in terms of overall largely on track to meet the targets, so about 95% of those are on target or close to target. Obviously this represents at 6 months, so some measures will improve as the year goes on, where they might be off target, but the report does give an overview of some of the reasons for why some of those measures are off target currently, and obviously outlines the highlights of work across our activities and issues being addressed by our activities across the last 6 months. So happy to answer any questions on that, or pass it on to the people who know the answers to those questions, or talk to the financial information first.
Thanks, Mark. Any questions, or are you happy to? Yep, Councillor Pennington. Oh, sorry, I didn't see you.
Page 166, Timaru Cemetery. It says we've a site that's been identified and secured. Can we know where that is? Because I understand it's changed slightly from what was presented earlier.
Probably best to pass that on to.
Yes, I'll pass over to Andrew Dixon, and it kind of post-dated the report as well, but we can update where we got to.
Yeah, we have purchased a cemetery site, which unfortunately can't be disclosed at this point because it still isn't public excluded. So we'll be bringing those minutes forward for release to the public later. But yeah, we did bid for 2 sites and we managed to secure one of them, which is the largest site, which is good. And we have had an approach from the neighbour of that site, and they're interested in selling as well. So we are still progressing that.
We have bought one, have we?
We have bought it, yes.
You can rest easy. And so we'll try and proactively release that next council meeting. Can we push those out, or is there still time constraints on that, Mr Dixon?
I'm sure we can get it at the next council meeting.
Brilliant, thank you.
Just a second question, and I know we spoke about it this morning, but I guess the revaluation of assets, Jason, has increased our depreciation budget massively, so we've got an underspend there. How are we going to deal with that going forward?
There's an overspend. So currently the overspend for the 6 months to date is at 3.9 million, and the full year is 7.8 million. So as we discussed this morning, this is a result of the revaluation of Three Waters, which went up $250 million, and roading assets, which went up $120 million. And so collectively, from a funding perspective, or from an actual perspective, because we've gone down that pathway, we're forecasting a $7.8 million deficit in that space. So this is the first time that we have completed the forecast, so there are still some questions to be asked as to, I guess, how we fund that.
Yeah, and that's a good question, Councillor Piddington, because the challenge we have is that we don't have any, because the depreciation is the result of a revaluation, it's almost like we have to wait a year to go and catch up on actually how that mechanism is funded and going forward. So we don't have any revenue that we can immediately offset it by upping charges or anything, because we set those before we knew what the reval would be. So that's one of the challenges that we have with a very substantial reval valuation.
I guess it's just a warning to ratepayers that something unexpected that's quite massive that's going to impact someone.
Oh no, I agree. Look, and I think it's a hard one for general ratepayer to get their head around the fact that we may have to increase rates to allow for increased depreciation on increased asset value, and in their minds they don't get anything for it in real simple terms. So yeah, to your point, I think the key thing is that we highlight that there's the issue now, and we'll work through the best avenue to address that over the coming months. But I think the key thing is that it will reflect in rates, and that's something we can't be afraid of having a conversation around. Thanks, Councillor Piddington.
And Your Worship, the other difficulty is that the depreciation is non-cash, but it has to be funded with cash. So it's a kind of a tricky one to explain to people. How you've got a non-cash expense that has to be funded with cash, but the reality is that's the cost of replacing those assets year on year.
Thank you.
Councillor Shannon.
Thank you. Just with regards to the building consent average processing time, now I note that it is of course tracking closer to the target of 12 days, and this is one of those areas that I know residents and everybody engaged in that process is happier to see that come down and down and down. But is that at some point broken down into, for example, small residential consents, large consents and what have you, so we can have a clearer picture of what is taking longer than others, so we can therefore go to the communities to say at least residential stuff is happening within this window?
I imagine that information is certainly available and can be broken down. I'm not sure, Paul, whether you can comment on that.
I think we can provide information, Councillor Shannon, that it's in bands depending on the complexity and cost. And we certainly provide that information through the normal reporting channels, or we often have done in the past. So I don't think it'll be a problem to provide you with that. Are you saying you'd like that in this report in future?
Yeah, I think so.
Councillor?
And I also think that that's potentially fairer on the team as well, to be able to say, we are doing this. It's these things within this band that are holding us up, be they resourcing issues or whatever.
Fair point, thank you.
Thank you. Further questions at this stage? Yes, Councillor Scott, thank you.
Jason, sorry, can you just remind me, so the debt to revenue ratio, this is at 31st December, which is at 146%. So when will we start to include the forecasting of the theatre on our debt to revenue ratio? Because we talk about how that will impact our financial strategy. I just wondered when that will start.
No, that's a good question. So as at today and as at probably last 4 months, it's been at 146 because we haven't taken out any more borrowing. We're looking at taking out some borrowing just at the moment in terms of cash flow around some of those capital projects. Normally within the long-term plan, we've got the 10-year 10-year borrowing cycle and then the impact on the revenue to debt policy. As part of the annual plan, we'll come back with what it is for the 23-24 year, and we can certainly, because we've got the capital programs scheduled out over 10 years, so we have the information, so we can certainly release in terms of where it's going, and happy to do that.
Councillor Pye.
Sorry, we seem to have jumped into the financial, but I'm not sure you've presented that yet. So I do have some questions on the financial, but I'm happy to wait until you present it.
I think we'll go back to Jason and then get into questions. Thank you.
I was going to suggest that. So Andrea's sitting here to talk about the financials as at 31 December, so we'll let Andrea do that quickly.
I guess from a overall perspective, we're showing an unfavourable variance of 7.5 million, which is largely due to the depreciation adjustment that we put through in December once we'd sort of confirmed the revaluation process. So that's one of the biggest contributors to the overall deficit for the month. The other ones are around the roading and footpaths are $2.5 million over budget. And then we've got some small variances around the corporate overhead charges. Capital for December is sitting at 25.8 million, which is lower than budget. Of the 64 million that we've estimated to spend at the end of the year, that's 13 million below what the original budget was. So, and then we've had no movements, as Jason said before, on borrowings in the month of December, but looking forward, there'll be some borrowings coming up.
So I think it's important to note the forecast is a critical piece of information. Up to this point in time, we've been reporting on the monthly results, and sometimes within those you get some timing differences. So what the forecast does, it removes those timing differences. And look, at the end of the day, the forecast is also, I guess, a best guess in terms of where we're going. It's probably conservative. It's not conservative. We've probably taken a worst case in terms of some of the things because it's just the way that accountants do it. So as we've refined some of the information in terms of waste and some of those other things, we'll be able to refine it a little bit further. But it is a good indication of what the annual plan will look like because these issues will carry on through the annual plan, which is important to note.
Already further questions on financials? Yeah, Councillor Pye.
It wasn't actually a question, it was more of a comment. I think this projection that you've provided here is fantastic, and I really commend you for the transparency and being upfront with the issues that council are facing. And so thank you for that.
Yeah, thanks, Councillor Pye. Good comment. Councillor Pennington.
Just on waste management, again, I know it was this morning, but for our ratepayers, why is the contract so far over, $1 million over? Because I thought a contract for waste minimisation, last year when we were presented with the contract of the year before, we were told it was the same amount. In fact, we've done better getting more for less. So I'm just not sure how it lands $1 million over when you have a contract.
The actual contract itself is not over, it's the waste minimisation activity which is over, which includes the landfill operations as well, that side of it. We are unpicking that at the moment still, and trying to identify where the costs and where the variances are. But there is fees and charges, it does cover that, and is less than what is budgeted for at the moment. So that has an impact as well on the activity. So it's not literally the contract cost as such.
Yeah, Ben.
Yeah, thank you. Just to add to that too, if you look at the rate that we have charged, that dropped significantly in the long-term plan as well. So in actual fact, it's whether we're going to collect enough from our fees and charges across the gate to actually balance out the activity as a whole, because we reduce the rate, that targeted rate that we use to fund the curbside collection. So there's that, and we're working our way through that to work it out, but there was a significant drop in the actual rate, and we had estimated that the fees and charges we would collect would make up that difference, and that's what we're working our way through at the moment.
Also, I'd like to point out too that the carbon credits cost is a lot higher than was budgeted for, which is included in that figure.
Yeah.
Sorry, corporate services costs are over 1.5 million over budget. The professional fees I see is $667,000. I mean, can you give an explanation of why those fees are so high over budget?
And that's on page 169.
Oh, sorry, page 169.
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah. I can have a first answer. So it's important to note that these are offset by savings in staff vacancies as well. So the personnel budget sits somewhere else in terms of that space. So we're struggling with the ability to recruit staff, and at times we have to bring in contract resource or consultants to enable delivery of the capital program or the long-term plans or some of the planning to continue. It's not ideal, but that's the cost of doing business in the environment that we're in at the moment. And we're always constantly checking whether that's the best use of the funds at that point in time, and most of them do offset staff vacancies.
I guess that's okay, Jason, but contractors cost more than staff. Have we got people in positions we should be trying to fill rather than have contractors, I guess?
I think there's a couple of other parts as well. I mean, if I deal with the contractor part, yes, contractors on an hourly rate might be more, but when you have a contractor, you do have an ability to go and target exactly the skill you seek for a very specific project or work stream for a specific time and then turn it off. And so it does enable a more targeted approach. And so the total might be less, even though the actual rate you are charged if you look at it hour for hour. The other part of it is, in some of there, it is an allocation, some of that overhead is an allocation of where costs for professional services, and we are incurring more in the regards to areas like legal fees, because we have increasing numbers of inquiries around Nagoimas and privacy issues where we do need to go and get advice in order to ensure that we keep our council's position safe against higher claims that we may have in some way breached in a duty of fairness or good faith to another party. And so that is another area where in the last year or two we have noticed significant increase in our cost areas, and it's difficult to manage because we don't have the expertise necessarily in-house to deal with some of these more refined legal issues or other professional advice issues that we require.
Thanks.
Cool. Thank you, and good point. And often recruitment's still going on for some of these positions while there's contractors filling the role, isn't there? And I think is there 54 vacancies? That'll be across pools as well. So sectors obviously struggling with filling certain roles. Councillor Booth, we'll go to you.
Just around our HR capability, I mean, are we fully staffed there in order to recruit the people and actively support our officers in their keeping people happy at the moment? I mean, what's the situation there?
Oh, look, there's probably two parts to that answer. Are we fully staffed? No, we're not. But we do have initiatives in place to try and manage that, whether it's by outsourcing, and we do use that in order to relieve the pressure on team members. But it's not, the recruitment process in a tight market is really challenging, because you can advertise, and we have had this, you get applicants, you spend time going through, but they may not, none of them may be actually suitable in terms of the skills and the attributes that are needed for the role. So we do our best to support our team, and so we have looked at initiatives to do that, because it is difficult at times to find people with the specific skill set to do all of that work. So the short answer is no, we don't, but we have other initiatives in order to try and manage that issue. But part of it also is that at times there are just not suitable applicants in the market.
And to answer your first part of that question, we have brought some more capability into the HR team to help the organisation with the level of recruitment that we've got underway at the moment.
It's fine to laugh about that, but the sector's got gaps. I mean, you know, I think the key thing is, as long as we're actively trying to recruit and fill those spaces, you know, we can laugh as much as we want about consultants, but otherwise, what are the options? We pull back and we don't deliver. So it's a balance, isn't it? I think. Happy to have a conversation on that with full transparency and public if you want to. Anyway, moving on. Any more further questions in regard to the plan? No, look, thank you for the work in regard to that. I know there's a lot that goes into that team, so I appreciate that. I'm happy to move that. Can I have a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Shannon. Put the motion to the floor. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against, carried. Thank you. Mark, you again, future local government on 184.
Thanks, Your Worship. So this report is around a draft submission to the Future for Local Government panel that, as you know, released their report back in October 22, and since then it's been out for consultation with submissions closing at the end of February. So the intent of that process going forward is that that report will go to the new Minister for Local Government in about June 23, I think, and obviously whatever comes out of that is still up for debate, depending on how that's responded to by whoever in the government. So the submission is obviously still a work in progress. We've sort of highlighted some of the key points in there that we think should be covered, and I'll get Bronwyn just to give a quick overview from that perspective.
So the draft report asks a series of questions. We have sent a memo out to council. We have received some feedback from councillors about areas of importance. One of the most important areas being that council remain sustainable and flexible and adaptable into the future to be able to deal with issues known and emerging for local areas. Main issue is to ensure that councils no longer receive unfunded mandates from central government, that central and local government consider their roles and responsibilities to work in partnership to ensure local wellbeing. There's an importance for community to include iwi and hapu in the decision-making process. An increase in public awareness and participation in the democratic process, building an equitable, sustainable funding and financial system, and ensuring the system of local governments are designed to be able to support in a way that they can be the best they can be. These concepts are rather at the high level. The whole idea and intention behind the report was to actually ask councils to consider what they thought the options may be for what the future for local government may look like, and draw back to the report for that.
So there's obviously a lot in the report and a lot of potential options for how the panel will finally report back to council. I guess that the draft report in itself, some of it was quite conceptual, seeking guidance and some ideas from councils as to what they thought was appropriate going forward, given all of the sort of background and issues that governments, councils, societies are facing around the world. So I guess what we're seeking from you is obviously endorsement for the submission as it stands, or any further concepts, ideas that we can build into it, and we've asked a bit of time to sort of finally craft it, as it were, and for the Mayor to sign it off.
Thank you. Is it Councillor Pye first, or is it Councillor Piddington? Councillor Piddington, sorry.
Yeah, point 50 on page 199, I don't agree with. I think we should be looking at getting 16-year-olds able to vote. They could be the most engaged going forward. So I was a bit disappointed to see that we do not consider it a viable option, and wondered why we don't consider it a viable option.
There are a number of options that came with the concept of allowing 16-year-olds to vote. Some of it is what they call the slippery slide approach, which is if I'm 16, I'm allowed to vote, and I'm having a say in the democratic process, then it may lead on to other things such as why am I not allowed to drink alcohol, etc. The panel does report that 16-year-olds who do engage will remain within the voting process. However, some of our other research that we've done actually shows the opposite of that.
Sorry, I don't mean what you mean by the opposite of that.
The opposite, that 16-year-olds won't actually engage within the voting process.
Well, I would have thought if you've got a good package around it, kids are at school, they're engaged, they might think local democracy is far more interesting if they can be involved at that age. So I'm just making a point, I disagree with that. And also on, I was just page 201 on forced amalgamations. I just wondered what the other councillors thought regarding that.
Sorry, what point? On point?
Forced amalgamations on page 201.
Thank you.
Smaller councils. Because that's not the general conversations we've had, I don't think.
Our concern is that the panel will report back that smaller councils as they stand presently under the present framework may be required to merge. Interestingly, Brendan and I yesterday went to a Tatiora conference where we spoke with some officers from Christchurch City Council, who actually considered one of the ways to ensure that that doesn't occur is to be able to provide larger TAs to provide supports to small councils. In the last session, we were talking about the difficulty all councils are having at getting employment, particularly in specialist areas, whether that might be a model that council would like to support as a way of sustaining councils, especially those smaller councils, as council of last resort. We're happy to take on any feedback or changes that council wishes us to make.
Yeah, thank you. Just going back to 49, I think we just need to give it some consideration for the submission, which is the 16-year-old vote. You know, options are we can include as is, or we could reapproach that, the wording in that, or we could exclude. Is there any you support as is? Okay. So there's general. Yeah, so, no, that's fine, okay. Oh, right, thank you, sorry. Apologies. Okay, so we'll move on from that point and we'll get to the voting soon.
Would there be something else that you'd want to include there just to encourage that going forward? Or, I mean, obviously, we're not ruling it out in the future. I think what we're saying is that maybe it needs a bit more work around it. Is that something that you think should be worked towards over time?
Councillor Piddington?
Okay.
So we've got Councillor Piddington. Yep.
Look, I'd be interested, Mark, whether we've actually asked 16-year-olds or we've actually just decided for them, 16 and 17-year-olds. Being that 16, you've still got the 3-year voting cycle, so you might not hit it for some time. So that's all I'm asking, whether we've actually spoken also to the group it affects or we've made the decision for them.
Well, I mean, obviously we haven't talked to every 16-year-old, but we're proposing a recommendation from this council, so it's for you to support that or not.
So yes, Councillor Jackson.
Just as a parent of people in that age group, I certainly don't recommend that they be able to vote at this stage. Their engagement level as 15 and 16-year-olds is incredibly low, so I'll be making their decision on their behalf. Thank you.
Councillor Pye.
If the room's divided, is the way forward to go that we don't support a change until there's further consultation across, either the community or the country that would support changing it?
Yeah, look, I mean, I think there's probably further research, etc. Councillor Burt.
Can we establish that divide? I'm gathering there might be just one person. I mean, we've, as a council, so many times tried to engage on youth council to various degrees, but most of the time, absolutely to the degree where they are not engaged at this level. It's definitely not at local government, and this should be left to central government, no more.
Yeah, and I think probably within a household there's different engagement. I'd probably side with Councillor Jackson, but I'm aware of Councillor Piddington. In your household, it's probably quite different. And, who knows, kids are all different, isn't it? But we don't have to decide, but we can put a recommendation potentially for more research, or, submit that more research, etc., goes into that point on pros and cons of the vote at 16. And, obviously it's going to be likely to be trialled at a local government level first, and I mean, that sort of makes sense as far as where it's trialled. But so I think the feedback's taken on board. Is everyone comfortable with that discussion? Yep, we've got that out. And then, so what number was your point before, Councillor Piddington? Sorry, 60. Was it 60? Oh, yeah, there you go. Yeah, and I'm just conscious on.
Forced amalgamations.
Yeah, forced amalgamations. Is there any further commentary on that point? Current, yes, Councillor Burt.
I was just going to say, in terms of that, it's not for us to even contemplate it, given that we know I think the way forward is about, reducing, from what we see, the ability for councils to be effective in local governance and government, and this way is just, it just fills that whole sort of void that they are looking at in terms of forcing us down that line. So I think we need to hold true to that. The other thing is we have seen the ability to be able to work collaboratively with our smaller councils around contracting and sharing resources, and I think that's the best way in this case.
Yeah, and I think that's the way forward. If Three Waters isn't successful in its current form, then it's likely to be a shared service model, hopefully at a sub-regional level, but this might come back to bite us again. Be careful what you wish for. So any further commentary? Anything else, Bronwyn, Mark?
No, but I mean, obviously we've still got a bit of time to finally craft the submission, so if there's any further ideas, feel free to flip through.
Yeah, sorry, Jen, if you wish, come up to the seat so we can put you on a microphone.
Thanks very much, everybody. I just think it could be useful making a statement near the front of this submission in support of those fundamental things of local democracy, so citizenship, one vote per person, and freedom of speech. I think that those are good things to really stand for explicitly near the top. Yeah, just my thought. Thanks.
Thanks, Jan. Any thought on that? Councillor Shannon.
I'd just like to support actually the submission in its entirety. The difficulty, the challenge that you had with the timing of this, the cynic in me says it was an awful thing to do to us at councils, but over that Christmas period and putting this together, I think you've done a remarkable job, and every note that I wrote down, you covered in the submission yourself. I think it's excellent, and I support it in its entirety as you put it together. Well done.
Thank you, Councillor Shannon. Yes, and well noted that a lot of work and a lot of submissions in a short period of time. It's a lot of pressure on the team, so we do thank you for that. So we're happy to move that forward. Was that you were happy to move that, Councillor Shannon? Yeah, and taking on the feedback, and obviously for to come back to me for final sign-off, and Councillor Parker, that was seconder. I'll put the motion to the floor now. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against? Carried. Thank you. Submissions, Water Services Legislation Bill and Water Service Economic Efficiency. Three Waters. On page 204.
Okay, so as we reported at the last standing committees, the proposed legislation for both water bills that is currently up for consultation. We're trying to come back to you with a draft submission for this council. So we have done a bit of work on this, and again, I guess highlighting that it's still a work in progress. So just a reminder, the two bills that we have are the Water Services Legislation Bill, which essentially sets out the functions, powers, obligations and duties, oversight arrangements for those four water entities. And I guess it's just about enabling the entities to get on with their work. And the other bill, the Water Services Economic Efficiency and Consumer Protection Bill, which talks around the purpose of that around providing for the regulation of price and quality of water infrastructure services and consumer protection. So the submissions that have been prepared at this point are draft. You highlighted the fact of supporting the CE4ELD submissions, which have been drafted and are attached to the agenda. So that'll form a part of it. But I guess the other aspects that have been put into the submissions that, as they stand, are the points that we would highlight. And happy to talk to those or to answer any questions. Bronwyn, do you want to highlight anything in relation to your one?
No, I just I've prepared the submission for you for the Water Services Economic Efficiency and Consumer Protection Bill. It does draw very heavily on the Communities for Local Democracy group, highlighting again the knowledge that local council has around water issues. Concerningly, the consumer protection for stormwater versus consumer protection for individual use water, such as drinking water and wastewater, the fact that they're all tied together. So they've been highlighted in all three submissions.
I guess the other aspect is obviously the government have indicated that there may be some changes to the water legislation. So we don't know what that looks like at this point. There could potentially be another round of consultation, maybe, we don't know, but that will come out in due course, no doubt.
Thank you. Questions in regard to these two bills? Councillor Scott.
I don't really have a question. I just wanted to commend you for your work because, Bronwyn, Ben, sorry, not you, Ben, clearly. I just want to say thank you so much because the last time we were here, we sort of sent you away to support the submission that was being put forward, and I just want to thank you so much. It was an excellent read, and I actually got it. So that is good. Because it was very well written, so thank you so much, and I support everything that's in there, so thank you for your work, it's excellent.
Too easy. Any further comments, questions in regard to the Three Waters submissions? Obviously there might be some tweaks, but so Councillor Scott, you happy to move that? Thank you. Can I have a seconder for that? Yeah, Councillor Shannon, thank you. Put the motion to the floor. All those in favour please say aye. Against carried. Thank you.